In this lesson we will do a little bit more complex setup, and I strongly advise you to watch this lesson fully concentrated. Otherwise you could easily lose track of things. I will certainly give my best to explain what I want to achieve and how to do it. You can see we have a female character, and the only thing I prepared is actually this morph. And let me zoom just a bit and you will then be able to see what I actually want to achieve. And you can see this is let's say some sort of a breeding control. So we will naturally build a breeding setup, and what I want to do, I want to create a breeding setup where I can actually control the speed of the breeding itself, so it doesn't really appear random. I want to have a full control of it. This will be a little bit more complex, but no worries, we will strip it down to chunks and go slowly. So what do we exactly want to build? Well, in this case I had in mind a slider, so let's just doodle it. So let's say we have a slider from 0 to 100, okay? And I want to be able to control the speed, so this would be really low, and this would be high. And I'm kind of out of the space here, but you really get what I mean. So that control should actually control this guy from 0 to 100 and back. So it should basically control how fast will this morph go from 0 to 100 and back. And you can actually see it's a really nice effect here. I also hope, let me put this all the way to 0, go to edit mode, and simply increase the strength to 100. I also hope nobody will find this character to be offensive in any way, because simply it's a female character with naked breasts. And I provided a little disclaimer in the brackets in the name of this lesson that it contains nudity. So if you are 18 or less, please close your eyes. Okay, so let's go back to the actual problem. The first thing that I will most certainly need is the slider itself. So let's build it here. So we'll select our female, and we will add user data. And in this case, we will call this control speed. You can actually call it speed of breeding. Okay? So it's really logical and easily understandable. The interface should be float slider, and in this case I don't want percentage. I would rather go with real value, and that would be actually something similar to percentage, just a simple number. And here you can set, let's say, a default value of, let's go with 50, so it's some sort of a number, so we don't wonder if nothing is happening because we have 0 here. So I have put it 50 here just to have some sort of a value that will do something in Espresso. One thing that I could also do is, let me go back to manage. I will, let's say that maximum value is 100. I don't think that will be too low. In fact, I think 100 would be maybe even too much, but let's go for it, since we have built all our sliders from 0 to 100 or something like that in previous lessons. I'll also drop this control. I'll right click here and say add to HUD, and just to have it accessible really quickly, and I will right click and say show always, like this. And now you actually I can really visualize that relationship I will try to build. So this guy, do it, and lock this just for a second. So this guy should control how fast this one goes from 0 to 100 and back. I hope that is really easily understandable. So that is our goal, that is what we want to achieve. Let's do the obvious now. We will add a espresso tag. I'll just unlock this guy. So let's add an espresso tag to our character. And we will drop our character here since we want to extract that data. So we'll do just that. So we'll extract that speed of breathing, slightly expand it, and also what is absolutely logical that has to happen is we have to have this strength, this breathe available to us in Espresso. So once again, you cannot drag that directly, but you can actually access anything if you drop that complete tag inside. So let's find the strength value here. So breathe strength. And that's it for the obvious part. Now comes a little bit more complex part. So we have to find a way for this complete setup to work with time. So if we press play, the breathing will occur, and with this control we actually want to control the speed of breathing. So we have to incorporate that time in Espresso. Just expand this a little bit so we have a little bit more space here. And the first condition we want to meet is actually as the time progresses here, we want a value, for example, from 0, then to 100, then back to 0, and again back to 100. So we have some sort of oscillation here in the time, and that oscillation will drive that strength, the strength of this morph. And as you may remember from previous lessons, all we need is actually a value of 0 and 1. And that is because we can use the range mapper node simply to convert that from 0 to 1. We can convert it to percentage. So that is pretty much a way to simplify. So we need a way, as the time progresses, to simply state at a certain time 0 and at a certain time 1. That could be really done with a noise node or random node, but as we said, we want to have the control of the speed of the breathing itself. For that purpose, I will just briefly see under my document settings, under my project settings, if I press Ctrl D, what is my frames per second value, because I can actually use this to my advantage. So let's read out the value. The value is 30 frames per second, and I will also set this value to 30 because it will be much clearer and easier to understand. And by adding a simple math node, but in this case, in the function inside should be modulo, and I will explain it after I create a new node, and that node will be time, since I want to use those frames per second, and that's really not it. I should really extract frame value here. Okay, get rid of this time, and actually if I put the result node, which is really useful and will often tell you what is going on, inside your Espresso setup, you can actually see if I press play, it tells me the frame value that is currently here. So, for example, if I set this to 100, the result will also be 100, and the same for 0. So it reads out the frame. Now it's time to explain this modulo guy, and it's really simple. It is the remainder of division. So let me help you visualize that. So let me connect this to a result node so we can actually see what is happening. And you see how those two nodes are yellow. That basically means error. So I'll connect this frame value in the input 1 and this speed of breathing in input 2. So let's now play the time and see what happens, and watch closely. It goes to 30 and then goes back to 0 and then back to 30, and it really cycles that way. Let me go back and really explain what is happening. This guy here, while it's in modulo mode, it calculates the remainder of division. So if we are at frame 1 currently, and actually let's go to frame, let's say 30. So if we are at frame 30, oops, it's kind of giving me problems, and this speed control is set to 30, it will divide 2 and the result is 0. You can really test that. So for example, if we set this to, let's say 27, the result will be 3. So let's set it back to 30, and also here with time, if you go to, let's say, frame 15, and then the 15 modulo 30 is 15. I hope this is really clear enough. So in that manner, when it reaches, for example, frame 30, the result will be 0, because you can divide 30 and 30 without remainder. Same goes for, let's say, 60, frame 60, because 60 divided by 30 is 2, so there is no remainder in that division. I really hope this is not too difficult to follow. So as a result of those 3 guys, we actually have a cycle. So it will go to 30 and back to 0. Let's go back, and now you can actually control the occurrence of that 0 value here. So let's press play and prove that. What if I drop this to, let's say, value of 10? Something like this. You can see it will count to 10 and then simply go back to 0. Okay, so we in that manner have actually a speed control. You can see now it will count to even higher number, set here, and then go back to 0. That is exactly what we want. So let's stop it, go back, and set the value of 30 here just for the clarity. As good as this may seem now, it is not actually precisely what we want. We want a little bit of a different setup. So actually our goal is, so whenever this hits 0, it should output 1. Let's go back, and why it should do that? Simply because then we will have the ability to transfer those 0 and 1 into the range mapper, which would then really drive this morph strength. I hope you are still following this. So how to achieve so that whenever it hits 0, it should output a value of 1? Well, that is really simple. Let's stop it and go back, and we just have to compare 2 values. So let's drop in a compare node. Let me just find it. So logic, compare, and we have to compare 2 values. So the first value we want to compare is actually this, that is outputted from this modulo. So we'll put it as an input 1, and the input 2 can stay 0. And why is that? Well, simply because, let me just wire this result node. So if you press play now, watch what happens. So I hope you really can notice this. It occasionally hits 1, and it hits it every 30. So what is actually going on in this node is that it is receiving the value from here. So let's control drag and copy this guy, and you will see the result here before it enters this compare node. So let's hit play, and you will see as soon as it hits 30 here, so just one more frame, then the result will be 1. Because we are saying in this node, if the input 1 is the same as input 2, in this case the 0, you should output a result of 1, which is actually a true statement. So it will output a value of 1 only when this result is 0. You can test that. So for example, at the frame 0, the result will be 1 here. At the frame, let's say 60, which is our value of 2 seconds, so 60, the result will be 1. So every second we will get a result of 1. The result of 1 will happen here every number of frames we set here. So every value we set here, if we set here, let's say 10, and press play, then every 10 frames we will get a result of 1. Hope this is understandable. I will drop this back to 30 just to have some sort of understandable relation between this speed of breathing and these frames. By this time, many of you would think we have this setup nailed now, but actually we don't. Now if we press play, we're actually getting here a behavior that is like some sort of a switch. So if we will use a range mapper here, let me just show you the problem and connect this guy and possibly copy this result node so I really know what is going on inside the range mapper. I'll demonstrate the problem. So no matter what you set here, even if you map this value, for example, you can actually map these values with a spline, so you have some sort of a custom fall off, you will always have a static number. Let me go back and show you that. So no matter what you do, you will have a static number. So this is really not good, and you have to find a way for, you can see how it briefly swaps, but there is no nice transition between those two numbers. That is really abrupt, and that is a problem. Let me stop this, go back, and actually delete both of these guys. So range mapper is a no-go in this situation. So we have to find another solution. We just zoom a bit on this lady, and you'll be able to see the final result. So we have to find a node that is able to convert those values into a range in between 0 and 1, so that would be a decimal range, okay? And that could possibly be triggered by this compare node, and that would count down the values. This will probably be a little bit scary, but you can use this monoflop guy, and this is actually a switch that will count down something for a specific time and duration, and the trigger is actually the switch. So let's first decide with this monoflop how much will that duration be. So how much will it last? It will last exactly this value, this speed of breathing. So let's connect these two guys, and the next thing we will have to decide how much time will it last. Okay, so it will last this amount of frames, and at last what will trigger this monoflop? The trigger will actually be this You just press play. The trigger will be this guy, this compare node. So let's go back and connect them both. So now to actually see what is going on, I will simply copy this result node, and actually this out port is not exactly what we need. We need a state port, because only the state port is able to output decimal values. So let's see what we have now, and you can see it really does exactly what we need. We stop it. So to put it simply, we trigger this monoflop. Let's press play and we will explain it along. We trigger this monoflop with this result from the compare node for the amount of time that is actually our frames, and the duration will exactly be 1 cycle of breathing. Hope this is really understandable. And we have put it here, the state is output, simply because it can transfer those values. So it simply counts down the values and converts them into decimal values. Let me stop this. And if you watch closely this guy and this guy, so we just go back and show you. So at the frame, actually every 30 frames, we have a result of 0. And if we progress just a little bit, so as it goes through this value, all the way to value of 30, which is currently set, this result goes from 0 to 1. But as soon as we hit that value once again, so we are back at 30th frame, so another second, the result will be 0. So it will start all over again, and that is exactly what we need. I hope this is not too complicated to understand. Let me stop this, go back. And this monoflop guy is really well explained in the documentation, so check it out. So now we are actually a step closer to completing our setup, and we just press play, and if I connect this state guy now to this breathe strength, watch what happens. The lady really breathes in, but it abruptly goes back to its default state, and that is not good. We have to find a way around it. So once again, you can clearly see that it basically inhales, so the morphs changes. I'll just maybe stop this, go back, and I will add this to HUD, so we have a visual feedback of that morph. So this is actually that, let me just disable this pose morph prefix, so, and I will hit here show always. So we will have a feedback in the viewport. Let me just play this and watch how it breathes in and it really abruptly goes back. We don't want that. That is really bad and it's not natural at all. So let me stop this and go back. Now we can actually utilize a range mapper. So calculate range mapper, and if I connect these two guys like this, and really I will wire this output to this result node so we can actually see what is going on, and simply nothing will change. And currently this range mapper is set simply to output those values. So it will output from 0 to 1, and the input will be also from 0 to 1, so it will absolutely do nothing. One beautiful thing inside the range mapper, let me just collapse this layer browser, we don't need it, and we will have much more space here. So one beautiful thing inside the range mapper is actually you can map that output through the spline. So in this case I want a setup where it would go slowly from 0 to 100% and then back, all in one cycle. So I'll create a spline for that. And here you can create a spline by simply clicking here. So I want to create a 3-point spline, and in this case I want this peak, this arc of the spline to be completely on the top, so we cover all the values in between 0 and 100. So just increase the tension here and change this y value to 1. This would be completely on the top. This x value is actually this direction, left and right. So now if we press play, we should have a different result. So she should basically breathe in and breathe out. You can clearly see that. Let me get rid of this espresso now, so we have a bigger representation of it, and we can actually control the speed. So if we increase this, the breathing will slow down. If we lower this, the breathing will increase. So that is really nice. So find a value that really works for you in your specific case, and I could have probably done this morph a little better, but it will serve the purpose as it is. Okay, so I really hope you liked this setup, and if you take a really closer look and slowly browse through all these nodes and examine them one by one, you will see the logic behind it. So I'll just increase those guys a little bit so you have some sort of diagram for you to dissect. And many of you wondered why I don't provide files with tutorials, and the answer is simple, because then I would have to do two versions. One would be for release 12 and the other versions would have to be for release 11.5 and 11, and that would really take a lot of time for me, which I really don't have. The second reason is also to encourage you to build that setup from the tutorial, and then you will actually have to put those guys in and connect them and hopefully pick up something. And if I provide you with a finished scene file, there is a fair chance you will really not dig into it. Okay, so that's it about the breathing. Once again, this is what we have. Our character is breathing, we can control the speed of that breathing, and it all works nice. Let me stop that and let's go to our next lesson.